Joined now by Vicki McKenna for our weekly Culture Cast segment. Vicki, thanks for joining us.
Great to be here.
Well, you know, one of the issues we talk about in this culture is the hypocrisy. We've talked about the hypocrisy of media, right? That the very same things they accused Trump of without proof for 4 years, they are now letting go because Biden and Biden's son is engaged in it. And so another example of this, perhaps the biggest example of this in our culture right now, is the way we're treating women. And it was just decided this past week with a majority, I might add, of Republicans voting for it, that we are now going to require women to register for the draft, which means, by extension, that should we have a draft and a war, women will be marched into battle as well.
Right. And so everybody is clear about this. The moment the United States decided to allow women into forward combat, into the infantry positions, is the moment the argument was teed up to require women to sign up for a selective service. So this is because I think people misunderstand maybe what happens when you put a physically weaker person who would be a target by our enemies, every one of our enemies, be it China or ISIS or Al Qaeda or whomever we might be fighting, would take a look at women in the infantry, and that's the target. They're the ones that would be put at highest risk. And you're in the zeal to try to prove, Helen Reddy was right and I am woman and I can do anything. You would actually put America's young women, mothers, young women at risk of being targeted and tortured and killed in combat to make the point that we've checked the diversity box adequately. It's insane. And yet Republicans have gotten themselves wound up into this argument to the point where they're not thinking it through, or they just don't want to fight it any longer.
Well, not only that, we keep hearing how we have to protect women on college campuses from predatory men. There are no more predatory men than ISIS, for instance, should they capture you if you're a woman.
Point. That's exactly right.
That's right. Before you are tortured and killed, you will be raped. There's no doubt about it. And so yet we have on a college campus where they have to magnify and over-hyperbolically inflate rape statistics to make feminist points, there's no doubt what happened to these women on the battlefield. That's the first thing I want to point out. The second thing I want to point out about this is you are endangering the men. Because when a man is standing on either side with two female soldiers who do not have the same capacities, by virtue of his masculinity and his instinct and his evolutionary responses, he's going to have to be deferential and trying to look out for them in ways he wouldn't have to do if he had very, very militarily ready men next to him on each side.
And I've talked to men in the military, I've talked to women in the military about this, and they all agree with you that this is going to, it shatters unit cohesion. It makes men, because of men's natural inclination to protect women, it makes men less safe, it makes units less safe, it makes readiness less effective, all because, again, we're trying to prove that that women are, that I guess in order to ameliorate the historical treatment of women better in the United States and in most places throughout history, but the horrible treatment of women in the past of America, that what we have to do is sacrifice them to rape, torture, and death, and also put the men at risk of death and an attack as well. Because, damn it, this is the patriarchy we're fighting here. I guess this is the big way to give the patriarchy the big up yours, is by putting women at risk of rape, torture, and death.
Yeah, I
know that when I was sitting around thinking, how do I fight the patriarchy, I would want to sacrifice myself to rape, torture, and death.
What would be the equivalent, Vicki? This is kind of like you just said, this is reparations in a way for what we've done to women. Now, can you imagine a similar circumstance, an analogy, if we were going to pay African Americans reparations and instead of giving them money or wealth or property, we said, okay, we're going to put you in the frontline positions on the, right? Can you imagine? We're going to put you, you're going to be cannon bait, right? You're going to lead the charge up Pickett's Hill. We're going to put you right in the backyard of ISIS and give you the glory of being the first man over the hill. How's that for reparations? I don't think that would
Hashtag equity.
After the break.
There's your equity in that. And how would that sit? But that's exactly what people are proposing to do to women. It's madness.
After the break, let's talk a little bit more broadly about what this means for combat, but also all the other instances in this weird culture of ours that has decided all of a sudden in the last 5 years that women, rather than being protected, the whole feminist movement has been destroyed. Rather than elevating women and suggesting that women are somehow inherently superior to men, we've decided to go the exact opposite way and destroy femalehood altogether. Right after the break. Okay, Vicki, let's pick up the question I asked you at the end of the last segment. What's going on in a culture? As 5-10 years ago, we were moving in a direction where women were seen as somehow superior to men. Men were supposed to shut up. Hashtag me too. Whatever a woman says is true. Whatever a man responds is a lie. How in 5 years have we gotten to the point where the whole progressive movement now is actually targeting womanhood, targeting motherhood, targeting the freedoms of women, the right to play sports against girls? What happened here?
All right, but first I want to ask how we are going to register women for selective service. Are they going to self-identify? Just question. What if you identify as neither gender? Big question mark out there. That's certainly going to be a question for a liberal federal judge to answer. If
I were in that position, I would immediately, as a woman, I would immediately invent a gender called pacifist gender. Right, which by my very biology prohibits me from actually participating in military activity. And what can they say? I mean, you got 174 of the stupid things anyway, right? Either that, or I would come up with general, 5-star general gender confusion.
I'm non-binary.
In other words, you have to treat me like a 5-star general. Give me all the money and let me stay behind the line. because literally, what can the government do at this point? But carry on with what you were saying.
All right. So, but if you think about this, the attack is on the concept of I think it all goes back to the attack on the nuclear family. If you can obliterate the concept of men and women in the United States, if you can change the law so that there aren't specific reflections of gender in the law. Remember, the way women are protected in the law, we have substantial advantages because we are protected explicitly in the law. You get rid of all of that. You get rid of the very concept of man and woman. And I think what they're really targeting is that stabilizing institution, which is the nuclear family. Look at the idea of selective service. You're going to take women to age 18 to 25. This is when women are in prime childbearing years. So you're going to take women 18 to 25. You're going to put them in the infantry. You're going to send them out into combat to be cannon fodder, which they will be. And before that, tortured and raped, because you're doing this to the generation of women who would be thinking about starting families, who would be thinking about getting married. So I think I know it maybe sounds a little dull at this point, but this is just another way to rip apart our single most stabilizing institution in the United States, and that's the nuclear family. Because you're not forming families when you're sending young women off into combat to get tortured, raped, and murdered. You're not putting families first. And by the way, what if the woman has a child already? So you don't even consider maintaining the familial relationship as you pursue with zeal this diversity checking exercise in allowing women to be signed up for selective service.
Did you just come up with a silver lining? Maybe if they give exemptions for pregnancy and birth, babies, maybe a bunch of women start getting pregnant real fast.
Wouldn't that be something?
Wouldn't that be something? But flip this around. Is there possibly a more sinister message behind this? That this isn't really about feminism or giving women prominent roles in the military? Could it be that the progressive globalists in charge, more and more in charge of our military, as we've seen with General Milley, for instance, is it possible that the entire plan here is to create a military that really can't fight, that is incapable, that is meaningfully incapable of going up against the Chinese, for instance, no realistic way, so that, in other words, we will surrender ultimately before we ever fight these wars to begin with?
So if you look at the latest Army recruitment ad, and many people have probably already seen it.
Although I had a fairly typical childhood, took ballet, played violin, I also marched for equality. I like to think I've been defending freedom from an early age. When I was 6 years old, one of my moms had an accident that left her paralyzed. Doctors said she might never walk again. But she tapped into my family's pride to get back on her feet, eventually standing at the altar to marry my other mom. With such powerful role models, I finished high school at the top of my class. I needed my own adventures, my own challenge. And after meeting with an Army recruiter, I found it. A way to prove my inner strength and maybe shatter some stereotypes along the way.
The United States isn't looking to create a ready force of people who will break stuff and kill people to defend the United States. We want a big group of people on the government dole who are there to do whatever social service, social justice project that suits them. It's in the case of our recruitment, it's not about the United States. It's not about military readiness. It's not about what's best for the nation. It's about me. But enough about me. What do you think about me? That seems to be the direction that we are going with regard to the military. Everybody else seems to be going in the opposite direction. China had its own military ad, and it was just oozing masculinity. Here's a nation that has called on explicit direction and education for young men to become more masculinized. And here we are in the United States trying to feminize everything to the point where it will be totally dysfunctional.